Ladies and gentlemen, a very warm welcome indeed to all of you. If you have a seat, please take it in a COVID-safe and appropriately distanced fashion. And how wonderful is it to be outside in the Canberra spring sunshine yet again. I'm Genevieve Jacobs, and in this funny old year, it's been my great pleasure to have been a champion for the Garden's 50th anniversary. And look, while things might not have worked out exactly as we had hoped for 2020, nature is of course the greatest healer, and I can't imagine anywhere better to be than the National Botanic Gardens as we look to a refreshed world, a world washed clean by rain and imbued with new hope for the future. I do want to acknowledge that we meet on the traditional lands of the Ngunnawal people. I recognise their ongoing custodianship, and I pay my respects to their elders past, present and emerging, and commit myself to ongoing acts of reconciliation. And I think that deep grounding in country, the joy we derive from nurturing the places that are dear to us, that water our souls in some sense too, is fundamental to why the gardens do and must matter so much to all Canberrans and all Australians. And the gardens are a place of beauty and a place of endeavour. We care for what we love most about this glorious and unique continent, and we do so by learning and doing and being, not simply sitting lost in beauty, although it's a pretty good place for that too. Here in the gardens, we discover more about our spectacular nation and how all its myriad natural worlds mesh together. We build knowledge through careful and diligent observation, and the pursuit of that knowledge yields us wisdom too as we watch nature's complex and infinite variety unfold. It is indeed a special, a magical and a treasured place for Canberra and for our nation. So what a delight then to be part of the Gardens anniversary and the launch of the new Banksia Gardens in all their curly, magical, mysterious wonder. But now to the formalities of the event, and the Minister for the Environment is with us. She is, and you may not know this, a Canberran by history. She was educated at Campbell High School and Dixon College. She's long loved the bush, of which she's seen a fair bit, as everything from a shearer's cook to a commercial pilot. She has also been Minister for the Environment since May 2019, and it now gives me great pleasure to ask the Minister for the Environment, the Honourable Susan Lee, to speak.
Thank you so much, Genevieve, for officiating today and for that lovely introduction. Can I also acknowledge the traditional owners on the land on which we meet, and in this year of bushfire and unwellness for COVID, note the significant effect that has on all Indigenous Australians. What a beautiful day to be here as I look at the day ahead in Parliament House. Not always seeing a lot of natural light and very intensely focusing on matters that seem a long way away sometimes from the natural world. I'm reminded of the important role that the Gardens plays, not just for local Canberrans, but for every single Australian. It's our most visited garden, Judy. I know that you've told me that on previous visits, with 500,000 visitors a year. And that's not surprising when you come in here and you find the secret corners and the real natural beauty. I do want to pay tribute, Judy, to you and your team, and I can see some of them around us here, for all the incredible work you do in showcasing these spectacular gardens, in interpreting them to visitors. I'm sure you get a lot of questions from people, and a lot of those visitors have been and will be in the future international. But you, as the people who love and care for this garden every day, you make the visits really, really special. It's amazing to think that 50 years ago, this sanctuary was a dairy farm. I've been a dairy farmer in a previous life. I just can't quite imagine it, the transformation from the passion and ideals of a few individuals, because the Botanic Gardens was first proposed for Canberra way back in the 1930s, but it took another 40 years to reach fruition. And even then it was proposed that it would be close to the proposed university, now the ANU, and CSIRO, also close, rather than being simply an ornamental feature. And I can remember when, because as Genevieve mentioned, I grew up, or spent some of my childhood, didn't grow up in Canberra, but coming to the gardens then, having been introduced to the gardens that I'd seen in Sydney and Melbourne that were very English, and because my heritage is English, I thought, well, that's what a garden should look like. But coming here and actually getting that really strong message that no, in Australia, this is what a garden should look like. The way that this was developed to showcase Australia's native species was certainly ahead of its time, and the fact that these gardens reflect our biodiversity and that vision for all Australians again makes these gardens extraordinary. It's wonderful to add the Banksia Garden to the list of features, and we came here on a very windy day, Judy, seems a few months ago. It was during COVID, and I couldn't quite imagine what the end product would look like, but today I really, really can. And the Banksia, with its large red, yellow, orange and gold flowers, is really an evocative part of the Australian natural world. It's a species with rich cultural significance. Who could forget the big bad Banksia men of May Gibbs's children's books? And it has great botanical significance. It's symbolic of the Australian landscape, which is well adapted to the fruits of Banksias opening after fire. Native birds enjoy the nectar, and many parts of the plant have been eaten and used by Indigenous people for many thousands of years. So a garden dedicated to the Banksia in the heart of our nation's capital is a fitting tribute to a species that is such a large part of our national identity. Finally, a really big thank you to the Friends of the Gardens, and some of you are here today because you again have worked really hard in making this beautiful garden the design that you would like to see and the reality that makes it, again, so important to every Australian. Thank you once again for having me here today.
Minister, many thanks. And I'd like to now call upon the Director of the National Botanic Gardens, a woman who knows a good plant when she sees one. Please make welcome Dr. Judy West.
Thank you, Genevieve, and thank you, Minister, for coming today and spending some time with us. I'd also like to acknowledge the traditional owners on the land we're meeting today, and obviously pay our respects to the elders past, present and emerging. Thank you to everyone who's come along today to share this event with us, and whether it's face-to-face, as many of you are now, or virtually, since we're live streaming this on Facebook. So it's certainly been a bit of a journey to get to today. Not only we survived bushfire threats and had hazardous smoke, but in January, and then we were closed down, had the gates closed for several weeks over COVID lockdown. But despite all that, all these hurdles we've had, we've actually managed to keep working, and our dedicated team of obviously project managers, landscapers, horticulturists have demonstrated their passion and their dedication and commitment to make this inspiring garden come to life. It really looks very different from what it did this time last year. Yesterday, as the Minister just mentioned, was the garden's 50th birthday. That is, it was the anniversary of when Prime Minister John Gorton first opened the gardens to the public 50 years ago. So also yesterday we paid tribute to the staff, and thanks to the staff and for their commitment over a long period of time. They all got badges. You'll see some of us with badges. We've all got pins that for whether we've been here up to 10 years, more than 10 years, so which is many of us. Dedicated team of people work in this place. So today, I obviously thank the Minister for coming in and being able to open this newest addition to the garden's landscapes and having this particular garden here. And it's great to have Genevieve here. She's been our champion for the anniversary this year, but we've hardly seen her because we've hardly had any events. So it's really nice for her to join us today. And also several of the Friends executive are here, and the immediate past president, Max Burke, is here as well, and I thank you. I also acknowledge the generous support we've had from the Friends for this particular garden. I'll come back to that in a minute. But the special thanks to the staff, and many of whom are standing in the back up there, who've planned and worked really hard to get this garden developed. And also we've collaborated with other Banksia experts around the country, many in WA. So a lot of the as many of you probably know, most Banksia species grow in Western Australia naturally, and so there's a lot of expertise there in how they grow. And so we've had to do a fair bit of what we're calling sort of extreme horticulture to get the species to be able to grow in Canberra's climate and the soils. So the garden we're sitting in now was once called Banks Loop, Banks as in Sir Joseph Banks Loop. This whole area was very densely vegetated, since I've been here it was anyway, and it had a walking path through there, so you could walk in fairly seats for quiet contemplation, but it was very underutilised. And so about a year ago we took the opportunity to think about representing one of Australia's major plant groups, the Banksia, and to actually have developed this area. So it was basically cleared almost all the vegetation out of it, and it was flat. So what you see today has been built up in good drainage systems, different soil types, different soil profiles being developed to enable us to accommodate the requirements for the species that we're growing. So many of these species, they've done some pretty extreme horticultural work with developing grafting species onto Western Australian species onto eastern species, so they'll be able to grow here in this time. So there's about 80 different Banksia types growing in the gardens here, planted out into here. They've been tested, many of them, on different parts of the gardens in the last 18 months, 2 years. But I think it's come up with surprisingly, I think it's just looking fantastic, actually. The plants are really looking good. So we'll see how they grow and develop, but all planted up in particular. So I obviously welcome you to have a look around. I just wanted to say also it's been predominantly supported by the Friends. The Friends gave the Friends of the Gardens gave us an anniversary gift of $120,000, which is what's been used to develop the gardens. Obviously, the staffing time has been put into that too. So the Friends is a not-for-profit organisation, community organisation of about 2,500 members, and they also do a lot of volunteering support in the gardens of about 200 members that are very active in that as well. So obviously we greatly acknowledge their commitment and partnership with us in running the gardens. And also I should congratulate the gardens on their 30th anniversary this year as well. They also had a big program of planned activities which hasn't taken place, but it's great that they can join us today in celebrating this one. So we're very excited to be able to open in the Banksia Garden as part of our 50th anniversary. At least we'll be able to do one of the projects we were going to do of the opening. And thank you for coming along today. Obviously we'll enjoy walking around once we've formally opened it, but thank you for the Minister to come in to do so. Thank you.
Thank you, Judy. Gee, I love that phrase, extreme horticulture. All of us who are gardeners know that, don't we? That the challenge of thinking, can I make it work? Can I make this grow? I've often thought that I'm glad I didn't ever keep all the tags of all the plants that have died in my garden over the last 30 years. Well, certainly one of the great treasures of the gardens are those who work in the gardens, but also those who work for the gardens. People who are deeply fired by a passion for plants, for nature and the bush and everything that it gives us. Please now welcome Max Burke to speak on behalf of the Friends of the Australian National Botanic Gardens.
Thanks, Genevieve. I too would like to pay my respects to the Ngunnawal and Ngambri people, traditional custodians of the land on which we meet, their elders past, present and emerging. Minister, it's fantastic to have you here. We really welcome you and hope you're back here regularly, and bring any of your colleagues here. We think this is probably one of the the greatest cultural institution in the ACT, let alone natural institution, and certainly that's our view. The Friends, Judy's slightly out of date. Our membership's up to just over 2,800 now. It went up, interestingly, it went up by 200 and something this year. So one of the interesting phenomena, and this has been observed right around the world apparently, has how people reach for what Genevieve calls the solace of the gardens. And I think for the gardens, the outdoor experience during COVID has been really important, and I think the passion of my colleagues on Friends to look after, support and love this place has grown rather than diminished during this shocking year. We, as Judy said, we had 30 events planned this year, and the gardens had, I'm not quite sure, I never added them up, but probably 50 events planned this year, so we've lost a lot of potential to show off the gardens, unfortunately, and I feel very sad for the staff who've put a lot of effort into organising that, plus the Friends members who did so too. It's been fantastic to see this place come into being, and I really thank Dave Taylor and his crew for the fabulous job they've done. While it might look a little raw at the moment, I mean, it will soften and the edges will, and the bushes will grow, and the sandstone will colour, and all of those things will change as the years go by. But we think this is a fabulous addition to the repertoire of the gardens. As Judy said, it's one of the most iconic genera of the Australian flora. It has representatives here of not all, but getting close to a very large percentage of the genus Banksia. And I think just from an educational point of view, it'll be gobsmacking for the 400,000 to 500,000 people a year that will be expected to come through the gate. So I think this is both educational, it's a beautiful place, and it's a place for solace. And I think therefore the Friends feel that our investment in this place, in this particular project, amongst many projects we are supporting now and will support in the future, we think this is a really great investment, so we're very proud to be associated with it. Thank you.
Max, many thanks indeed, and I know so many people here in Canberra hold the gardens deep and close to their hearts, and you're right, solace is something that we associate during times of trouble with being out in nature, hearing the call of the birds, the softness of the atmosphere all around us. It's a treasure that really speaks to our hearts. I'd like to now invite Minister Lee to declare the Banksia Garden open with a plaque unveiling and to return to, I think the cord is on the right side. And Max, we'd like you to return and join in that.
Thank you.
Please you can join me, Max, to recognise the really incredible efforts of the Friends of the Gardens, without whom it would not look the way that it does today. So thank you. And the court. The Banksia Gardens are now officially open.
So, ladies and gentlemen, that concludes the formalities here. We're now going to move to plant the Banksia Solandri. I presume, Max, that's named for Solander? Yes, and for Daniel Solander, the great Swedish botanist. And so thank you very much to those of you who've been part of all of this. You're welcome to trail along for the official planting with the spade, or indeed just to wander through the gardens. But it's been our great pleasure to have you here today as we celebrate 50 years of the Botanic Gardens and the opening of the Banksia Garden. Thank you very much.
So now that we've had the official opening of the Banksia Garden, we're just going to do a little walk down, and I'll take you through some of the species that we're passing on our way.
Yeah, I saw that.
So as you've already heard, there's a tremendous diverse mix of Banksias here in this garden, with more than 70 different Banksias planted. And as we walk down, I'll just take you through some of the particular ones that we're passing. We've got everything from ground covers from Western Australia here that run along the ground. We've got Banksia coccinea from Western Australia, one of the more challenging species to grow on this side. And all the plants planted on the left side of the garden here are from the eastern states. As Judy and Max mentioned in the formal speeches, this garden has really been about collaboration. And just a quick hi to all our friends who've collaborated with us from across the country. Kevin and Kathy and Alex George over in WA, and Phil and Katrina on the eastern states providing all their expertise. And a chance for me to say for our fantastic team here who've done all the design and all the rock work that you see as we're walking through as well. Truly a collaborative story, this garden. So one of the things that you'll notice too is that there's a lot of raised garden beds. And I think Genevieve was talking about extreme horticulture, and we described some of the Banksias as certainly plants that have special needs, and so we've gone to great lengths in terms of some of the innovative techniques that we've used and been supported from with other people. The sandstone and the mounding you can see around us is all part of that, and the grafting program that we've been doing, grafting Western Australian species onto Eastern species, has been another part of that. So in terms of extreme horticulture, behind me here you'll see huge mounds of sandstone, and that in some cases that's up to 4 metres in depth, providing that wonderful drainage that a lot of these West Australian species need for them to grow well. We've also got some great craftspersons here in the living collections. This dry stone wall here behind us was done all by our staff here at the Gardens. We sent them on a dry stone wall course, and as you can see, it's delivered a fantastic dry stone wall here as part of the Gardens. Led by Dan and Antho building this dry stone wall, the brief was we needed a curved north-facing wall to provide thermal mass and reflective light for the low angle of Canberra's winter sun. And the purpose of that, of course, is to provide some extra protection for some of the species that find it challenging in Canberra's winters. So what we're really hoping here is that not only will people come and have a look at these wonderful new Banksias that we've got in this garden, this is really just a small piece of what's here at the Botanic Gardens with over 4,500 species. And for those that can come and visit now, it's a wonderful time in spring with lots of flowers, but throughout the year the Banksias will keep flowering, and particularly in autumn where there'll be a peak flowering for a lot of the species. As you can see here behind me, we have some burnt Banksias planted in this part, well not planted, placed in this part of the garden, and these were collected from Buddery National Park with the support of Buddery Botanic Gardens and Buddery National Park staff. And this is really just that story of Banksia and fire. And what we discover and understand is that some Banksias are killed by fire and regenerate from seed, and others will shoot from buds along their trunks. Here we've really got that journey of Banksias through fire and the regeneration that takes place in the landscape post-fire. So just while we're waiting for the planting, this garden's full of weird and wonderful Banksias. There's ones with flowers that hang upside down. There's the tennis ball Banksia, which we think should be planted outside the Australian Open tennis events, with a completely round flower that looks like a tennis ball. There's some little tiny flowers. There are ground covers, tall trees. It's an incredibly diverse group of plants. But for some of the more common ones, there's a really significant part to those as well, and that's how they fit in the landscape. Behind me here, we've got Banksia Integrifolia, which is all up and down the east coast. And we've got this sand dune here representing the coastal environment. And when these are in flower, these provide nectar for a whole range of migratory birds and other species, and a really important part of the ecology of the east coast of Australia. Final piece in the jigsaw of the planting here today. That's one Banksia that we'll see available in commercial nurseries in the future. Really good example of one that's a slight variation on the norm. It has purple leaves in winter. Normally this species has green leaves. All planted and done.